Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Mariah kidnaps Dominic, what we know so far. Mariah Copeland will kidnap Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's chancellor. Some insider leaks are pointing to a former surrogate twist, so let's talk about what we know so far. Mariah obviously hasn't been doing well mentally for quite some time. Tessa Porter had concerns about Mariah's facility in Boston not being the right place for her since she seemed worse instead of better the last time they talked. When Mariah comes back to Genoa City, there's no guarantee she'll have improved. Mariah might come home despite the mental anguish she's still feeling and go even further off the rails once she sees Tessa looking cozier than ever with Daniel Romalotti Jr. It's easy to imagine Mariah witnessing a kiss between Daniel and Tessa that causes yet another mental health setback. Mariah might have a full-blown break from reality based on some of the hints about what's ahead. That brings us to some Y&R spoilers involving Devon Winter's immediate family member landing in a dangerous situation. The trouble that's brewing will tie in with Tessa and Daniel's story as well as put a strain on Devon's marriage to Abby Winters. With all that in mind, there's already been speculation that Mariah might snatch Dominic. Back when Mariah was Dominic's surrogate, she developed a bit of an obsession with BOWIE and couldn't help but feel a mother-son type of bond. Now some insider leaks are seemingly backing up this Dominic kidnapping storyline. It looks like Dominic's going to get aged up a bit with a new actor for a hot plot that involves Mariah and a getaway car. Mariah shares an adopted daughter, Aria Porter Copeland, with Tessa, but Y&R may ignore her and work this Dominic angle instead to give Devon and Abby a story, too. Since Mariah clearly won't be in her right mind, she may see an opportunity to grab Dominic and impulsively take him. Mariah won't be thinking logically and could somehow view BOWIE as her fresh start child. Mariah Copeland kidnapping Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's chancellor is quickly shaping up to be one of the most disturbing and emotionally explosive storylines looming over Genoa City, and the warning signs have been there for quite some time if viewers look closely enough at Mariah's deteriorating mental state, her unresolved trauma, and the haunting bond she formed with Dominic back when she carried him as a surrogate. What we know so far paints a chilling picture of a woman unraveling under the weight of grief, jealousy, and fractured reality, and all signs suggest that when Mariah finally returns home from the mental health facility in Boston, she won't be healed, she'll be worse. Tessa Porter's growing unease about Mariah's treatment has already been established, with Tessa openly questioning whether the facility was truly helping or simply masking the symptoms of something far deeper and more dangerous, especially after Mariah seemed distant, hollow, and emotionally unstable during their last conversation. The fact that Mariah might come back to Genoa City without having made real progress is terrifying, particularly when she's walking straight into a situation that could shatter what little stability she has left. Tessa, trying to survive emotionally in Mariah's absence, has been leaning more heavily on Daniel Romalotti Jr., and while their connection may be innocent or rooted in mutual support, perception is everything when someone is already spiraling. It's not hard to imagine Mariah returning home, exhausted and raw, only to see Tessa laughing with Daniel, touching his arm, or worse, sharing a kiss, a moment that could instantly trigger a catastrophic mental relapse. For someone as fragile as Mariah, that sight wouldn't just hurt, it would confirm every fear whispering in her mind that she's been replaced, abandoned, and erased from the life she once fought so hard to build. From there, the descent could be rapid and brutal, pushing Mariah into a full-blown break from reality where past attachments resurface with dangerous intensity, particularly her unresolved connection to Dominic, whom she once carried, nurtured, and bonded with in a way that blurred emotional boundaries even before things went wrong. Back when Mariah was Dominic's surrogate, her attachment to BOWIE was portrayed as touching but also unsettling, with Mariah struggling to separate the biological experience of pregnancy from the legal and emotional truth that Dominic was Abby and Devon's child, not hers. That bond never truly healed or faded, it simply went dormant, buried beneath layers of denial, guilt, and forced acceptance, waiting for the right trigger to re-emerge. Now, insider leaks are suggesting that this long-simmering thread is about to explode, with spoilers pointing to Devon Winter's immediate family member, unmistakably Dominic, landing in grave danger, a situation that will ripple outward and tear at the foundations of multiple relationships, including Devon's already strained marriage to Abby Winters. The looming crisis is expected to intertwine directly with the Tessa and Daniel storyline, meaning Mariah's jealousy, heartbreak, and psychological collapse won't exist in isolation but will collide head-on with the lives of everyone around her. Speculation has intensified with reports that Dominic is set to be rapidly aged up with a new actor, a classic soap move signaling that the character is about to be central to a high-stakes plot involving movement, danger, and emotional confrontation, and the mention of a getaway car in these insider leaks sends a clear message that this won't be a simple misunderstanding or brief scare. If Mariah does kidnap Dominic, it won't be calculated or strategic, it will be impulsive, emotional, and fueled by a distorted belief system that convinces her she's doing the right thing. In her fractured state of mind, Mariah may convince herself that she's rescuing Dominic, protecting him, or reclaiming a piece of herself that she believes was stolen, especially if she starts viewing him not as Abby and Devon's child but as her fresh start, a second chance at motherhood, love, and purpose after everything she feels she's lost. While Mariah already shares an adopted daughter, Aria Porter Copeland. With Tessa, there's growing concern that Y&R may sideline that connection in favor of the Dominic angle, choosing the darker, more twisted emotional history to give Devon and Abby a storyline packed with urgency, guilt, and explosive confrontation. In Mariah's mind, logic won't matter, legal boundaries won't matter, the devastation she causes won't even register at first. All she'll see is BOWIE, the baby she carried, the child who once made her feel whole, and in that moment, she may believe that taking him is the only way to survive the unbearable pain crushing her from all sides. The fallout promises to be devastating, Abby's worst nightmare realized, Devon torn between empathy for Mariah and fury over his son's disappearance, Tessa racked with guilt over whether her actions pushed Mariah over the edge, and Daniel suddenly finding himself entangled in a crisis he never intended to ignite. As the search intensifies and Genoa City rallies to find Dominic, the deeper tragedy will lie in the realization that Mariah isn't acting out of malice but out of a shattered psyche that can no longer distinguish love from possession, comfort from control, or hope from delusion. If the leaks are accurate, this kidnapping won't just be a crime, it will be a psychological tragedy years in the making, forcing every character involved to confront uncomfortable truths about trauma, responsibility, and the devastating consequences of ignoring red flags until it's too late. And when Mariah finally faces what she's done, whether through arrest, hospitalization, or a heartbreaking surrender, the emotional scars left behind may never fully heal, leaving viewers to ask whether this was always Mariah's destiny or a preventable disaster that no one stopped in time. The aftermath of Dominic Newman-Abbott-Winter's Chancellor's sudden disappearance would send shockwaves through Genoa City almost immediately, but the true horror of the situation would only begin to sink in as the pieces slowly fall into place and all roads start leading back to Mariah Copeland, a revelation that would devastate everyone who ever believed she was finally on the path to healing. At first, Abby Winter's panic would be raw and uncontrollable, her maternal instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong long before anyone could confirm Dominic was gone, and as her terror collides with Devon Winter's desperate need to stay rational, their fragile marriage would begin to fracture under the weight of fear, blame, and unanswered questions. Abby would replay every recent moment in her mind, every visit, every conversation, every time Mariah was anywhere near Dominic, and suddenly memories she once brushed off as harmless would take on a chilling new significance. Devon, meanwhile, would struggle with a storm of conflicting emotions, fury at the violation of his family, crushing guilt over Mariah's past trauma, and the unbearable realization that someone he once trusted with his son's life may now be the very person putting that child in danger. As authorities are notified and an urgent search begins, the focus would quickly shift toward Mariah's recent behavior, her unexplained return to Genoa City, and the increasingly erratic emotional state she displayed before Dominic vanished. Tessa Porter, already drowning in guilt and confusion, would be forced to confront the terrifying possibility that her fears about Mariah's mental health were not only valid but tragically understated. Every unanswered call, every cryptic message, every distant look Mariah gave her would come rushing back, leaving Tessa haunted by the thought that she may have been the last person who could have intervened before everything spiraled out of control. The situation would grow even more complicated as Daniel Romalotti Jr. finds himself pulled into the center of the storm, stunned by the realization that his innocent attempts to support Tessa may have inadvertently acted as the final trigger for Mariah's psychological collapse. As whispers spread throughout Genoa City, the narrative would shift from concern to dread when surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, or circumstantial evidence begins pointing toward a getaway car matching one link to Mariah, confirming the worst fears of Devon and Abby while simultaneously igniting a moral crisis among those who know Mariah's history. This wouldn't be a typical kidnapping fueled by greed or malice. This would be something far more disturbing, driven by delusion, obsession, and a warped sense of love that blurs the line between protector and captor. Inside Mariah's fractured mind, she wouldn't see herself as a criminal, she would see herself as a mother reclaiming what she believes was always meant to be hers, a belief rooted deeply in the physical and emotional bond she formed with Dominic during the pregnancy she never truly let go of. As she flees with Dominic, Mariah's internal narrative would likely frame the act as a rescue mission, convincing herself that she's saving BOWIE from a life she believes is unstable or unsafe, especially if she starts rewriting reality to paint Abby and Devon as distracted, conflicted, or incapable of giving Dominic the unconditional devotion she believes only she can provide. The tragic irony is that Mariah already has a child, Aria, yet in her distorted perception, Dominic represents something different, a chance to rewrite her own story, to erase the pain of abandonment, rejection, and perceived betrayal by starting fresh with a child who once made her feel whole in a way nothing else ever has. As the manhunt intensifies, the strain on Devon and Abby's marriage would become painfully obvious, with subtle accusations bubbling beneath the surface, Devon questioning whether Abby's complicated surrogate journey created emotional vulnerabilities that Mariah exploited, while Abby silently wonders if Devon's lingering compassion for Mariah blinded him to the danger she posed. Friends and family would take sides, not out of cruelty but out of desperation, as everyone searches for answers while grappling with the uncomfortable truth that mental illness doesn't always announce itself with obvious warning signs. Meanwhile, Mariah's time on the run would grow increasingly unstable, with exhaustion, paranoia, and emotional volatility threatening Dominic's safety despite her insistence that she's protecting him. Each mile she puts between herself and Genoa City would deepen her isolation, cutting her off from reality and reinforcing the delusion that the world is conspiring to take her child away. The closer authorities come to locating her, the more dangerous the situation becomes, as Mariah's fear of losing Dominic could push her toward increasingly reckless decisions, forcing viewers to confront the heartbreaking possibility that love, when twisted by untreated trauma, can become something terrifying. Back in Genoa City, Tessa would be consumed by a desperate need to make things right, questioning whether confronting Mariah directly could bring Dominic home safely or whether her presence would only make things worse. Daniel, caught in the crossfire, would wrestle with guilt and helplessness, knowing that while he never intended to replace Mariah, his role in Tessa's life may have unintentionally confirmed Mariah's darkest fears. As clues continue to surface, the emotional toll would extend far beyond the immediate family, shaking the community's faith in its ability to protect its most vulnerable members. When Mariah is finally cornered, whether through a tense standoff, an emotional confrontation, or a heartbreaking surrender, the moment won't feel like a victory but a devastating reckoning, as she's forced to confront the reality of what she's done and the irreversible damage it's caused. Dominic's safe return, if it comes, will not erase the trauma inflicted on Abby and Devon, nor will it magically restore Mariah to the person she once was. Instead, the storyline promises long-lasting consequences, a child forever marked by his disappearance, parents struggling to rebuild trust and stability, a marriage tested to its breaking point, and a woman facing the painful truth that love alone cannot heal a mind in crisis. Even after the immediate danger passes, Genoa City will be left grappling with uncomfortable questions about accountability, compassion, and how easily good intentions can spiral into tragedy when mental health issues go unaddressed. This won't just be another dramatic kidnapping arc, it will be a slow-burning emotional fallout that reshapes relationships, rewrites loyalties, and leaves an indelible mark on everyone involved, proving once again that on the young and the restless, the most dangerous villains aren't always driven by hatred, but by love that has lost its way. As the crisis deepens and the search for Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's Chancellor stretches into agonizing hours and then days, the emotional damage across Genoa City would intensify in ways no one could have predicted, transforming what began as a shocking disappearance into a full-scale psychological reckoning that exposes every fracture beneath the surface of these interconnected families. Abby Winters would spiral between relentless determination and complete emotional collapse, clinging to the belief that her son is still alive and safe while simultaneously torturing herself with worst-case scenarios she can't silence, and every passing minute without Dominic would feel like a personal failure she may never forgive herself for. Devon Winters, trying desperately to be Abby's anchor, would find himself unraveling in private, haunted by flashes of Mariah holding Dominic during those early days, moments that once felt intimate and beautiful but now replay in his mind with a sinister edge, forcing him to confront the horrifying truth that emotional boundaries were never as solid as he convinced himself they were. As the investigation expands, law enforcement would begin piecing together Mariah's movements with unsettling precision, uncovering evidence of premeditation that contradicts the idea of a purely impulsive act, including cash withdrawals, packed belongings, and a route that suggests Mariah may have fantasized about this escape long before she actually took Dominic. That revelation would shake Tessa Porter to her core, because it would mean Mariah's breakdown wasn't sudden, it was quietly unfolding while Tessa was still trying to believe that love and patience could fix everything. Tessa's guilt would evolve into self-loathing as she realizes that her attempts to stay strong, to move forward, and to survive emotionally may have unintentionally reinforced Mariah's belief that she was being replaced, discarded, and erased from her own family. Meanwhile, Daniel Romalotti Jr. would become an unwilling lightning rod for resentment, with whispers spreading that his presence accelerated Mariah's descent, a burden that would push him to withdraw even as he tries to support Tessa through the darkest chapter of her life. The deeper investigators dig, the clearer it becomes that Mariah isn't hiding Dominic for money, leverage, or revenge, she's hiding him because she genuinely believes she's his rightful protector, a delusion so deeply rooted that it resists logic, compassion, and even self-preservation. In Mariah's mind, every news alert, every police update, and every public plea from Abby and Devon would only reinforce her paranoia, convincing her that the world is trying to steal Dominic from her all over again, repeating the trauma of the moment she had to hand him over after giving birth. As her isolation grows, Mariah's mental state would deteriorate further, oscillating between moments of tender care and frightening instability, creating an unbearable tension as viewers are forced to wonder whether Dominic is truly safe or merely surviving inside a fantasy that could collapse at any moment. Back in Genoa City, the pressure on Devon and Abby's marriage would reach a breaking point, with arguments erupting over everything from media strategy to whether Mariah should be treated as a criminal or a patient, disagreements that expose fundamentally different coping mechanisms and unresolved resentment stemming from Dominic's complicated conception. Abby, consumed by fear, would demand decisive action and accountability, while Devon's empathy for Mariah would be misinterpreted as disloyalty, igniting accusations that cut deeper than either of them intend. Friends would begin choosing sides, not out of malice but exhaustion, as the emotional toll of the situation becomes impossible to contain, and the once tight support network surrounding Dominic's parents begins to fracture under the weight of grief and blame. As the manhunt tightens, Mariah would sense the walls closing in, prompting increasingly erratic decisions that suggest she's losing her grip on the careful narrative she constructed to justify her actions. Her thoughts would turn darker, more desperate, as she begins to wonder whether surrender means losing Dominic forever and whether running is the only way to preserve what she believes is her last chance at happiness. The haunting possibility of a standoff looms, not one defined by violence but by emotional devastation, where Mariah is forced to choose between the fantasy she's built and the reality she's been desperately avoiding. Tessa, unable to sit back any longer, would contemplate breaking protocol and reaching out to Mariah directly, believing that only love, not authority, can bring Dominic home safely, even as those around her warn that her involvement could push Mariah further into paranoia. That internal conflict would tear Tessa apart.